We'll start right out with Ganesha. So this is Ganesha. We have a big one in the bookshop, and Ganesha is the scribe. He's written down all of these mantras and so forth that we're going to be talking about. And he has a little chant that goes along with his, that is used to invoke him. So I'm going to go ahead and chant that. It's sort of an auspicious way to start. If you read Devanagari, I've got that at the top. If you can read the transliteration, I've got that there. And then I've got an English translation below. But the chant goes as follows. And this is just half of it, just in the interest of time. Om Gananam tva ganapatigum havamahe kavim kavinam upamasravastamam jistarajam brahmanaspata anasruvanuti bisidasadanam. That is a way to start and have an auspicious talk. So we'll see if it works. So you probably are not aware of how many words we use from Sanskrit in our everyday life. Like avatar, people are familiar with avatars. That's a word that was incorporated when computers started up, and they needed something to talk about the little figures that represent a user. And so it originally was the incarnation of a deity. So like for Krishna or Rama or Lakshmi, they would be avatars. They would be representatives of the divine. Karma is a very familiar word. Yoga, another familiar word. Guru, very common word used nowadays from Sanskrit. Very important word. It means teacher. It's one of the main words for teacher. Nirvana. People are familiar with that. This is sort of the highest level in Buddhism. It's not used in Hinduism, but it is used. It's known, but not as focused on as it is in Buddhism. Mantra. Those are sacred chants, like the one I just did. Juggernaut. Juggernaut is, we think of as somebody's really moving forward with a lot of force. And that came from Jagannatha, which was these large chariots that they use in villages. They'd have the deity of Krishna on it, and then they would roll Krishna through the village. And so that was a juggernaut. Loot comes from loot, which means to rob. We have quite a few more. Pundit is very familiar in political circles. Very important term in Hinduism. But in that case, it meant somebody who was a scholar. Has a different kind of meaning, I think, today. Shampoo, believe it or not, comes from Sanskrit. Jungle. Candy. Pepper. Cheetah, from chitraka. Kat comes from katva. Let me point out something with Sanskrit transliteration. You probably noticed I said katva. That's because there's a little line over the A. So that means that I will stress that sound. And if you ever see a line over a syllable, over a vowel in Sanskrit, you know that that's a stressed vowel that you would emphasize when it would have you would land on that vowel as the beat for that particular one. So in this case, it's at the end of the word. Punch comes from punch, which means 5. We see pancha a lot in Sanskrit, that word. Oh, there's nirvana again. So anyway, lots of familiar words. So just so you don't feel like you're in unfamiliar territory. Let's see, I have to figure out how to do this so I can read my quote here. Put you guys over there. All right. So this is from HBB, and it is Sanskrit is truly the language of the gods, as the Brahmins call it. and is the most perfect, the richest, most melodious language on earth is ever known. It is the language of the Vedas, the sacred scriptures of the Aryans, of the Upanishads, those profound philosophical treatises that underlie all Indian thought. The Mahabharata, that grand epic that contains in its bosom the sublime Bhagavad Gita. The man who neglects Sanskrit in his search for Eastern wisdom is like a man attempting to fathom the ocean by skimming its surface. For within its structure lies hidden meanings, keys to cosmic mysteries, which no translation can ever adequately convey. So you can see that our founder, HPB, founder of the Theosophical Society, thought very highly of Sanskrit as basically a fundamental language. So interspersed here, I put a few deities just just for fun, I guess. So this is Lord Shiva, and associated with a lot of things, which I'm not going to go into the interpretations and meanings of the various gods, because a lot of them are kind of encrusted with Western interpretations. And I'd like to try to keep as close to the original cultural origins as possible. But he has his vahana, or his vehicle, is behind him. It's the Nanda. And he's often associated with serpents, with snakes. So you'll see the snake around his neck and that sort of thing. You'll see that in his iconography. In front is a Shiva lingam, which is the ritual kind of shape that is used to worship Shiva. They do what's called abhishekam, where you pour various, like milk or honey or ghee, various substances over the Shiva lingam during the ceremonies, like Shivaratri. And it conveys a sort of a cosmic power. So that's Shiva, Lord Shiva. So the first part of this, we'll be talking about silence. Why do I want to talk about silence? Because all sound arises out of silence. All thought arises out of silence. All intuition arises out of everything arises out of silence. The whole universe arises out of silence. And we don't talk about that much in Western culture or at all. But if you think about it, and in other words, Christianity starts, in the beginning was the word, right? So right off the bat, there's no silence, there's a word. So, but in Hinduism and in Eastern religion in general, there's an idea that this silence is. And Matt, if you have anything to say about this as we go along, that'd be great. I'll be happy to hear, because Matt is Matt still there? Did he go? I don't see him. Anyway, because he's our resident Hebrew scholar, so he knows a lot about Western scripture. So anyway, here's what is said about silence in Sanskrit. So the word is mauna, and it's found in many of the sacred scriptures. And in the Tripura Rahasya, it's said that silence alone is the supreme form of the absolute. So it's, I'm not going to dwell on it, but just to say that we're kind of come up later on with a book written by HPB called The Voice of the Silence. And when people hear that, they go, "Oh, that sounds very romantic," but it must just be some kind of a fanciful notion. But it actually is very important, and it's the key to meditation. It's the key to tapping into the sort of cosmic world. We talked this morning about intuition, how intuition arises out of the absence of thought. And that's a sort of a silence, right? If we're not thinking, there's a silence of the mind. So in the Gita, the Bhagavad Gita, Sri Krishna says, "Among secrets, I am silence. Among the wise, I am wisdom." So there's this whole connection with silence. It's very important in scriptures. So let's see, I'm having a hard time seeing this on my screen. So the sound is the first vibration of the eternal, but is in silence that it is known. So you can just look at that. I'm not going to talk a lot more about the quote there on the screen. It's a lot of words. But again, the whole idea that silence is fundamental. As they say, that anahata, nada is the unstruck sound is kind of a weird thing. It's like the Zen koan, the sound of one hand. Two hands make a clap. What is the sound of one hand? And it's that same idea, is to go to some deeper place, to take us to a deeper place where something's not obvious, something's not being told us, something's not being shown us. We're finding it for ourselves through our own intuition. Okay, this is the goddess Sri Lakshmi, and she's often associated with prosperity, wisdom, the goddess of the home. So many interpretations and associations. And her Vahana, there, the elephant, and also the Mayuri, but I don't see that here. That the peacock is also associated with Sri Lakshmi. Okay, I'm going to keep an eye on the time. I see we got some long quotes here, but so we'll read this one for sure. It must be remembered, this is from HBB again, it must be remembered that the ancient Sanskrit texts were never meant to be read literally. Every scripture of antiquity, whether it's the Vedas, the Upanishads, or the Puranas, was written in a veil of symbolism, accessible only to those who possess the key. Without this key, which is known only to the true initiate, the grand truths contained in Sanskrit writings remain unsealed to the ordinary reader. This is why modern translations, however well-intended, often distort or diminish the deeper wisdom. They fail to grasp that Sanskrit, like all sacred language, was composed in such a way that it operates on multiple levels of meaning: historical, allegorical, and esoteric. And by esoteric, she means pretty much everything, non-physical. So spiritual, we would also use that word. Not in esoteric in the sense of something that's hidden, something that's not obvious. So again, she puts a lot of stress on using Sanskrit and being aware of it. So here is Sanskrit. Okay, I'm going to skip this part. Anyway, it's connected with all of these different languages, and as we know from the Secret Doctrine, uses a lot of Hebrew, a lot of Egyptian, Greek, Latin, and so forth. And Sanskrit also is extremely important. I'll just say that in the interest of time. This is a tree where it's used the word for our word mother, and how it kind of branched out in different directions. But if you see over to the right there is the Sanskrit group. It's Indo-Iranian, and so Persian and Sanskrit kind of go together, Old Persian and Sanskrit, and they kind of go off in that branch there. And you can see the Slavic branch up there, Proto-Germanic, Latin branch, and the ancient Greek. I think we're up in the one that goes over to Germanic one there. And Mutter, I think probably is the closest to mother. There's mother in English, yeah, right down from it. But anyway, to show how these languages all branched off from a common root. There's a common root down at the bottom, Proto-Indo-European. So all of these languages originated, from a common mother, and then branched off into all the regional variations over time. Okay, there's a beloved god, Sri Hanumanji. Hanuman is affectionately called the monkey god. He had incredible strength and agility. He could leap across, he left from India over to Sri Lanka. He could lift a mountain, and he helped Hanuman. This is Hanuman, helped Rama get his wife Sita back from the god Ravana, the demon god Ravana. And so he's beloved in Hindu culture, and many chants to him and songs and so forth. I'm going to skip that. It's an important, Sanskrit's important in terms of, she's saying more of the same thing. It's kind of like the advertising for the thing. What I wanted to get to here is I wanted to show you that Sanskrit is important because it is classified according to where it's produced in the mouth. So that you see number one is the back of the throat, the guttural sounds. And we'll see the syllables that go with each of these in the mouth actually corresponds to Sanskrit syllables. And it was classified that way. So you have the guttural, you have the palatal, which would be where the tongue hits the top of the roof of the mouth. The retroflex, where the sound is used with the tip of the tongue in the front of the roof of the mouth. The dental, which is sounded at the back of the front teeth, and then the labials, which are sounded by the lips. And we have all of these sounds in English as well, but English isn't classified that way, the way Sanskrit is. So it's kind of interesting. It's kind of cool that that they thought it was so important to classify the letters that way, so that here we have the Sanskrit. These are all the letters in Sanskrit, and that's the whole alphabet. And at the top are all the vowels and the corresponding characters that go with each vowel. You can see there, A, E, U, and then R, and then L, and then E, I, O, and owl. And then we have the different syllables for the consonants. And ka, you can hear that. If you say a ka sound, you'll feel it in the back of your throat, right? That's a guttural sound. Ka, ka. So you have a ka sound, and then you have a ka sound, which is with the H. And you see the syllable, the character is very different. So you don't say ka the same way you say ka, and so forth and so on. So there's a number of them that have that H sound that goes with the vowel, the original consonant sound. So ga, ga. So these are guttural sounds. And then on the other side of that line, you have cha. And whenever you see C, it's going to be pronounced cha, no matter what. There's no sa sound for C. S has its own sound. Actually, S has a number of different sounds, but if you see C, it never has a S sound. It always is a cha sound. So cha, and then an aspirated cha. So it's an even stronger cha. You have ja and ja. So these are the palatal sounds, and so forth and so on. So you see that I won't go through the whole thing, but you see ta. If you do a ta, do that yourself. Ta. You see that you're doing it with your tongue to your teeth. It's a dental sound. So forth and so on. So they're all classified that way, and that was because these sounds were actually, it was a written language. It was long before it was a written language, it was a spoken language, and so all of the scriptures and so forth were repeated orally over the thousands of years before they were actually written down. So when they wrote them down, it was very important how it was sounded. They went to a great deal of trouble to make sure that they were capturing the sound that was actually made, in ancient times, almost like a tape recorder. It's like some kind of a transcription of the sound itself. This was very important to the ancient Sanskrit people who, when they first started writing down their language. So I'm just going to real briefly talk about Panini. Panini is organized the whole thing into a grammar. As you can see, there was nearly 4,000 sutras, or 4,000 lines and stanzas, with all the rules for Sanskrit. So you can imagine it took a while to learn that language. And I won't go into the whole thing about that, but it's very complex and sort of off-putting to anybody who really is like, yeah, I really want to learn Sanskrit. It's like, yeah, be careful what you wish for. It's very difficult. But The precision is what I want to stress there. And it was extremely precise language. And therefore the amount of detail is carried forward in the scriptures. Let's see. Okay, mantras. Yeah. So the ancient rishis did not choose Sanskrit as the vehicle of their divine revelation by accident. It was selected because it is not only the most perfect of languages, but because it was constructed according to the very laws of cosmic vibration. The sound and form of its letters are in harmony with the subtle forces of the universe. To chant the mantras in their original Sanskrit is to activate powers within oneself and within the hidden fabric of existence. This is why the study of Sanskrit is not merely intellectual. It is spiritual, and its mastery opens doors that remain shut to those who rely on only translation. You know, there's people that don't really care for the way Blavatsky writes, but I find this very inspiring. And I think that if you go deeper into what she's saying, when she really cared about something, her expression was right on. And that very, very clearly, the whole idea of activating powers within oneself and within the hidden fabric of existence. I mean, it's incredible. And to think that that was written like in the 1870s, well over 120, 130 years ago, whatever, long time ago. Anyway. So this is mantra. The word is written there in Devanagari. You can see ma, that's the ma sound, and then there's is tacked on to the tra, is the n sound, ma, n, and then n, tra. So mantra. I just wanted to show you one Sanskrit. This is a very simple word, so it's easy to see the what's going on there. So it means instrument, and it specifically connected with the mind. Man means, we have that in manas. We have it in so many Sanskrit words that have man in there. Anytime you see that, that means to think or intellect, something to do with the thinking level of the human composition, of which there's 5 or 7 levels. So now here we're going to talk about a specific mantra, and this is Gayatri mantra, which is extremely important not only in India, but also in Theosophy. So it's one of the few mantras that we use in Theosophy that are fairly well known, although most Theosophists say Gayatri for some unknown reason. There's no stress on the ya. All the syllables are level, so it's Gayatri. Just go straight across like that. And it comes from the root Gaya, where there you can see the stress there on the Gaya, but it loses it when you go into the actual word. Gaya meaning to sing, but tra, which we saw in, right? Tra, and then it changes form into a tree. I believe it's because it's in the feminine. I'm not positive about that, but I think that's right. And so this Gayatri mantra is one of the real fundamental mantras, and a good one to learn, even if you're not interested in Sanskrit per se. It's said to have a great deal of protective powers. And you're invoking the goddess Savitri here, and she will come to your aid when you chant this mantra. So that sounds like a good thing, right? To have a friend like that on your side. So it's similar to invoking Jesus or Mary. It's a similar thing for a Hindu person. And the mantra goes Om Bhur Bhuva Suvaha. And the Suvaha is, you see Svaha there, but it's actually Suvaha, because that's how you say it to make it sound kind of a little bit nicer. Om Bhur Bhuva Suvaha Tat Savitur Varenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yona Prachodayat. And when they chant it in Sanskrit, they do a little funny thing at the end. They go Prachodayat. So, but that's the whole thing. And you can, whenever I'm in turbulence on an airplane, for example, I go into Gayatri mode instantly. So it's just a very nice thing. And you think of, the fact that you have being riding shotgun with you, and it's kind of cool. So anyway, my little plug for mantras. So this is a breakdown of the mantra itself, and I won't go through the whole thing, but Bhur means the realm of the earth, and Bhuva is the mental realm, and then Suvaha is the spiritual realm. So you're invoking both the earth, the mind, and the spiritual realm, and then going through the thing, asking for Savitri to come and help. And almost invariably, the mantras will have praise for that deity, and describing their incredible qualities. And then here's a translation of which there's a lot of different ones. I almost hesitate to say it, because it kind of puts, what it says is not as important as the feeling that you get. And you think of that goddess and you think of her radiance coming into your life and helping you. But anyway, here's a stab at a translation. We meditate upon the divine radiance of the venerable source, Savitri, that permeates the physical, mental, and spiritual realms. May that supreme being enlighten and inspire our intellects. So, that's good enough. You get the idea. It's that light, feeling that radiance or that effulgence, that divine light that purifies. So that's a mantra, and very important in Sanskrit. In Sanskrit usage, and why Sanskrit is another reason why Sanskrit would be important. Okay, probably everybody's familiar with that. That's the Om symbol. It is said to be, it's called the pranava, or the cosmic source, the original primeval vibration, the Big Bang, if you will. That started the whole universe, that from that vibration. And so that's a sort of a symbolic representation. It's a stylized version of Om, the O letter and the M letter, which then is sounded as Aum. And you'll see how that works. But when you chant it, you say Om. So it's a little bit complex, but Aum is never used as such. It's only, this is too hard to explain. But anyway, there's a reason why you need to know that the Aum is there. And this is the following. From the Mandukya Upanishad, talks about 4 states of awareness. And this is a real fundamental understanding in Hindu, particularly Advaita Vedanta philosophy, that there are 4 levels of awareness. And this takes a lot of thinking. This could be a whole talk in itself. But so we have four states, and 3 of which we're really familiar with. Jagrat, which is waking, Svapna, which is dreaming, and Sushupti, which is deep sleep. That's sleep without dreams. And then Turiya is the 4th state, and Turiya only just means 4th. It doesn't have a word by itself, because you can't describe it. There's no term you can use to describe it. It is our pure being. It is who we really are. And it's said that sages are very realized beings will actually, their consciousness is no longer, it's their Jagrat state, their Svapna state, and their Sushupti state is completely pervaded by Turiya. So they are actually living in that transcendental state. As they say here, the pure, undifferentiated awareness beyond thought, perception, and individuality. So this is said in the Mandukya Upanishad. And you see there's 2 parts to the Mandukya. The first part is just describing the syllable Om. And we say Om, but it's actually Aum. And we'll look at that now. So this is the Jagrat. I won't go through the whole thing of this. This could be a whole talk in itself, as I say. But its sound is Ah. So you see the Ah sound there? So that's the original sound. Now the dream state is in Svapna is the dream state, and its sound is U. and you may have seen this word in Theosophical writings, taijasa. It's sometimes in some of the more esoteric works. It is the dream state, taijasa. And then the end of aum, that sound, it's not a vowel sound, it's a consonant sound, just basically a vibration of the lips. And it's the end of the word aum. And this is for deep sleep. And deep sleep is the closest state to this fourth state, pure consciousness. It doesn't have any mental activity. Both dreaming and with waking, there's mental activity. With deep sleep, there's no mental activity. The mind is completely quiet and silent. And so it's its sound. And then, surprisingly, or not surprisingly, the last sound has no sound. The last state, turiya, is just the silence after you say om. So you say om. That silence, that's where turiya lives. So it's sort of an interesting way we can see something that we are aware of on an ongoing basis. We're either awake, asleep, or dreaming. And pervaded by all these three states is this fourth state, which is that silence, going back to the silence we talked about at the very beginning. So here we have all four, so you can see them there. Not important to remember any of this stuff, but just to realize that this sort of categorization of our various states of consciousness is important, and was looked at by the ancients, thousands of years ago. We're trying to understand how that all works. So there is Rama in the middle with Sita and Lakshmana. And then down below in the corner there is Hanuman again. Now Hanuman is actually a giant, so he's made to be very small in that picture, but just to fit him into the picture. But anyway, they are very important in the Ramayana, which is an epic story of Rama and Sita, and goes into all these families. A very interesting, incredible story. Before they had soap operas, this was, it beat them all in terms of all the complexity and the twists and turns and emotional, stresses and loss and, victories and defeats and on and on and on. So very interesting. But we're not here to talk about that. Okay, food. So this has to do with a very important aspect of our lives that is treated very with a great deal of reverence in Hindu practice and in Sanskrit. Sanskrit is an integral part of that. So every night when I have dinner, sometimes when I remember during the day, but definitely for dinner, there's always a prayer that goes with this, with eating these yummy foods that are here. And its prayer is called, the term is Brahmarpanam, and the prayer goes like this. This is the first part of it. Again, there's a second part, but I'm not going to go into it right now. Brahmarpanam brahmavahir brahmagno brahmana hutam brahmayivatena gantavyam brahmarkama samadinaha. So this is, Brahman is the divine, is the supreme consciousness. It's basically the source of all being. So this is as divine as it gets. And so while we're thinking about having our food, we are not just thinking about, yum, 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 I got to gobble stuff down. We're thinking about the fact that this is actually going into our bodies. It's going to become us. As it goes into our bodies, we're thinking of it coming as a divine source, as the ultimate cosmic source as it goes into our bodies. So it's sort of giving it that blessing or giving it that reverence. It's not, we're not just treating it as something that we're chomping down. It's something that we're incorporating into our own being. And so as you can see there, you were saying Brahman in all its different forms is within that food. And Brahman doesn't have a gender or anything like that. It's just the absolute or the divine. So I just wanted to show you that. I chant this every day. At least there's a second part to it that goes on. So now talking a little bit about something I do every Saturday, which is attend bhajan, sometimes on Sundays, sometimes on special Hindu holidays. There's a variety of different forms of music in Hinduism, in India in general, South Asia in general. And people are familiar with ragas and so forth, sitar and all that. But there's a lot of singing that also is involved, along with the mantras that we've already talked about. And there's different forms of singing. The one that I participate in, or the group that I participate in, two groups actually that I participate in, do the first one, which is called bhajan. And bhajans are simple songs, well, they can be complex, and they're built on Indian harmonics, so they have a little different sound than we're used to with Western, like Christian hymns or things like that. But they are it's the same basic idea that we're sort of expressing our love and reverence for the divine through these songs. And I will not put you through the whatever of singing one, but just know that they are there, and that's an important use of the Sanskrit language. So let's see, what do we want to say here? Yeah, so Hinduism, Sikhism, and Jainism, and the bhajans often will have the various gods, and can be sung in all these languages. The ones that I usually sing are either in Sanskrit or in Telugu, occasionally in English also. Very few, but there are a few. Mostly Sanskrit. And as this characteristic, simple and melodic, spiritual and devotional, repetitive, meditative, and accompanied by music, usually a harmonium, almost invariably a harmonium, a tabla if you're lucky. We have a tabla player. That's not something they don't fall off trees, but there are tabla players around. Dolak is a big drum. Mridangam is a big drum. Kartal, I'm not familiar with that, but there's a kanjira, which probably is a similar thing. And then Veena. Veena's the one that goes dong, 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 bong, bong, bong. That's a Veena, and that's an accompaniment instrument. You often see it accompanying sitar. So this is actually the one that I do. This is the place we just go to a school over in Kirkland, and this is for our practice. That's not the whole group, but just to kind of show you people practicing. And then we have in this case, we're worshiping Sai Baba as an incarnation of Lord Krishna. And the idea is that it's a devotional. You're singing these songs with a devotional feeling. It's kind of weird to do it without actually hearing the songs, but they do occur. And so then, like, for example, we'll have a list every week. There's my name there with this particular one, but song, and then we'll have the key and so forth. So you see all these here, these are all Sanskrit. Well, actually, this is no, that's Sanskrit too, yeah. Sometimes there'll be some Hindi in there, but I don't see any of these with but you see, as you see, they're all Sanskrit, and like Gajavadana, that's for Ganesha. Or Durga is the goddess Durga, and so forth and so on. So it goes through the whole thing like that. So just to show you, this is an actual ongoing practice. Okay, then we have yoga. Yoga, I don't know how many people here do yoga. Hopefully people are familiar with that. Yes? Erica's raising her hand. The audience is raising their hand. Everybody in the audience is raising their hand. All one of them. So yoga means to union, to join. And ultimately the union is with the divine. And so the idea behind yoga in Hatha yoga is the form that we're familiar with, the different different poses. But yoga is also a larger divide. It's basically a spiritual practice of any kind. It could be those physical forms, or it could be various other practices. And look at a few of those. So the Yoga Sutras, I don't know if folks are familiar with this. HPB talks about the Yoga Sutras in The Voice of the Silence, but these are spiritual practices leading up to Samadhi. The ultimate form of yoga is the realization, a complete realization of, in other words, the mind becomes completely one with the divine. So there's these different stages, yamas and niyamas, asana, pranayama, and I won't go into this. Again, that's another talk altogether, but there is a series of stages allowing the yogi, the person, or yogini, I guess, if you want to use the female form, although I don't see why you can't be a yogi as a woman without having to have the yogini, to allow them to reach a state of consciousness where they are completely united with the divine, complete yoga or union with the divine. And so there's a work called the Yoga Sutras, extremely important, probably the most familiar work in Hinduism for Americans, because it's often referred to in yoga studios. And the whole idea behind the Yoga Sutras is that previous figure I showed you is the different stages, the different practices that we do to allow our minds to become more subtle, to become more clear, to become more radiant, to become more our own true nature. And so the second stanza after kind of giving reverence to the divine is yoga is the cessation of the fluctuations of the mind. Yoga chitti vritti narodaha. Yoga ha chitta vritti narodaha. And so it's actually pronounced yogash, but I won't go into all the details of grammar there. But the idea that our minds stop moving, all the thoughts slow down, just like what we were talking about this morning with the intuition. So ultimately, when the mind becomes very still, then you get to tada drashtu svarupe vastanam. And that is the seer, that's the person who is now, their mind is completely open and clear, abides in its own true. So our own true nature is this radiance, or this divine light. So that's how it starts. That's how the Yoga Sutras start, and then they go into all the practices and so forth. But the idea, it starts right off with the final prize, with this idea of the mind slowing down, finally getting so clear that it sees everything just as it really is. So this is another god. This is Sri Vishnu. Now, Sri Vishnu, Swami Sarva Priyananda likes to call it, he's a couch potato. So he's dreams all day long. And since the inception of the universe is basically his dream. And you can see the dream coming out, and that's us. There's a universe out there. He's lying in a sea of milk curd on a snake with a cobra with 1,000 heads, having this dream, and then that's how the universe is created. This is obviously mythological, but kind of a cool, I like image myself. Let's see how we're doing. Oh, we're not doing too bad here. We're moving right along. Okay, now a little bit about the voice of silence. Presumably some of you are familiar with the voice of the silence. I was told by one of the venerable Theosophists here that it's really too hard to understand that book, and they don't know why it's studied. I'm the opposite camp, that I don't know why everything else is studied. I study when I want to know about Theosophy. So in the voice of silence, and this actually Linda has done a talk on this a couple of years ago, I think now, Linda. And the what are called the paramitas. And so this is just talking a little bit about the voices. The the voiceless silence, there are three fragments. The first one is the voiceless silence. The second one is the two paths. And the last one is the seven portals. So we're going to talk about the seven portals a little bit, very briefly. And as she says here, thou shalt attain the seventh step and cross the gate of final knowledge, only to wed woe. If thou wouldst be Tathagata, follow upon thy predecessor steps, remain unselfish till the endless end. Thou hast the knowledge now concerning the laws of being. Out of the seven ways, two alone are open to thee. The great perfections, paramitas, and the voiceless silence, these two are the doors leading to the goal. So they are the seven paramitas. And paramita is the highest, and it's like going beyond. It's going to the farthest state, as they say. To go is me, and ta is state of quality. So it's the going beyond quality. These are the perfections. And this morning, Sam chanted the Purna. Purna is another word for perfection. Sam's not here today, but it was nice that he did that. So there are seven perfections. If you master these seven perfections, voila, you're there. So, easy, right? So the first one is dana, and from the root da, to give. And so the first perfection, or the first quality that we would try to cultivate, is this idea of giving or generosity. And then the second and third. The second is Shila. Shila is a good word with dharma. That we have ethical conduct, that we practice ahimsa. We don't harm others. That we try to help people where we can, and we don't do bad things to people. So that's Shila. Important. And then the third is Kshanti, which is my lifetime practice, which is patience or forbearance, capacity to endure. Very important. We have a very high energy society, and patience is not always as much of a virtue as it could be. And so cultivating patience along with the first two, giving and ethical conduct, is the sort of the foundation for moving forward into the next states. Virya, let's see, energy, vigor, heroic effort. I like the word enthusiasm for virya, and it's the idea. Virya is like virile. The word virile, a lot of strength. So, but I like the thought of, particularly because it balances the one Shanti, patience. So you have patience, you have enthusiasm. I mean, those two go hand in hand. If we have both of those things, we're in a pretty good place. We're enthusiastic, but we're patient. We're patient, but we're enthusiastic. So it's a good state of being. We're not always there, but that's a nice place to sort of aspire to. And then jnana is to meditate or to contemplate. This is talked about in the Yoga Sutras. We just had one of those states in the woman doing asana, and you saw those little figures in the Patanjali Yoga Sutras. One of those was jhana, which basically means to meditate. It's where the word Zen comes from in Japanese Buddhist Zen. It means to meditate, and so the idea of now we've kind of cultivated our lives in terms of our emotional, mental, our physical being, emotional, mental, and physical being. Now we start going into deeper states of meditation. Viveka is discernment. I actually think I grabbed the wrong word here. I think that the next one is vairagya. We'll talk about that in a second. But viveka is discernment, and that's seeing this, discerning from the real from the unreal. In other words, the spiritual from the mundane. And then the last state is samadhi, which is also the last state in the Yoga Sutras. And it means to be completely completely absorbed in the divine. It's a transitory state. You can go out of samadhi. It's not a permanent state, but it's definitely a state to attain to. And then the last one, I think this is actually the one that the H.P.B. uses in the Voice of Silence, is vairagya. And that means detachment. In other words, a dispassion, not getting, passionate and trying to grab things in the world, and not that you're, kind of dull and boring, but that you're just not. You keep an even keel, and you don't attach to things. You enjoy the world as it is. You see the beauty in the world without having to grab it for your own, make it your own property. Okay, mandala. People are familiar with this. Usually you hear mandala, which isn't really correct, but mandala is any kind of a sacred figure. They have a lot of different forms. Again, that's a whole talk in itself, but it's an art form in Hinduism and South Asian culture, and a Sanskrit word. This mandala is actually showing the different chakras, and you can depict spiritual energy in visual form. And so I wanted to show that that here you have the different chakras arranged in a very pretty spiritual form, spiritual artistic form. Another one would be, this is actually from Tibetan Buddhism, but it's actually, these will be different states. It gets very complex, different states of being here. And it's almost like a map, like a road map, this whole thing. Again, I won't get into it. It's extremely complex. You've got various deities and so forth, all the way out to the outer part, to the inner part. And so the sadhaka, the person who's doing this practice, will actually travel through these different places with their minds, with their imagination, and do a spiritual journey in using the mandala. So this actually is where I had planned on finishing, and we're right on time. So this is